My incident was attending to casualties from an accident scene, and there were loads of them. So I was trying to like triage, evacuate some, but I was the only skilled first aider at that point. So there was lots of anger and rage from every corner because everybody was trying to like make me attend to their own person, but I couldn't do much. So there was a rage with the crowd and relations of the accident victims. Um, so at some point I was being attacked by relations and other people because they were all trying to get me to help. I was doing my best, but I felt like I was being threatened by these people. I tried to explain what I was doing, but it just wasn't happening. Um, it took some courageous persons like to pull me out of the scenario. But at the end, I think everybody became calm because they realized I was actually trying to help. I had my ID card on, so that was something that really helped to like identify me as a volunteer and not necessarily like a health worker in the hospital where we finally landed. Um, I think why it happened was because everybody was overwhelmed. There were about 36 persons injured, and there was just myself skilled, and then I was using 7 others to help. So I think it was kind of overwhelming, and everybody was being emotional. So I think that was the reason for the attack. And then I think what changed was because of the intervention of others, like them talking to the people in the local dialect that they understood. So everything became calm afterwards. So I was able to attend to the few I could. Unfortunately, we lost some. And then I think what I learned, well, what I learned really is like you can't really control people's emotions, but you still have to do what you got to do. And despite threats and things like that, you still have to look out for your own safety before you can attend to any situation. And if it becomes overwhelming, I think we need to step back a bit and allow others to do it. I think that's my own story sharing for the evening. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much for sharing. And it's obviously a very challenging situation. It may be one that other members of the community have some comments or questions. So just to put that back to everybody else, does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask or comments about this situation? Okay, so there'll be a few via the chat here, so for the benefit of the recording, I'll just read them out. So Aaron is asking if you were attending as a first aider or as a nurse.
Kristen.
Sorry, I'm not sure if other people had the answer. You kind of broke up. Could you just say that again?
No, I'm not a nurse.
Okay, fine, right, yes, a couple of people just asking, although I'm not sure how much of a difference it makes. I guess maybe if you're saying that you're trying to assist, which you said you identified yourself as a first aider and you communicated with them, so yeah, that's obviously an important part of your strategy for trying to reduce the threat to yourself. And I think that's something very important that you can reflect on in the case study in describing in detail the actions you took, which you described there.
Yeah.
And the assignment, detailed assignment information that we've pointed everybody to, will have a few questions you can pose to yourself as well. Yeah, Erin's just making a point about triage. But so what I would say about that as well is that we are primarily interested in the threat of violence. So Caroline was very focused on that in the summary, which is excellent. But just for the benefit of other people, let's not get distracted by sort of other management issues or how we should be triaging people or anything else. I mean, we're just focusing on the strategies to sort of mitigate risk there, really. So thank you, Caroline, so much for sharing. That's great, and we look forward to seeing the case study being developed. Okay, unless there are any other pressing questions, anything from from anybody else, I think we'll ask somebody else to volunteer. So hopefully now Caroline stepped up and done the difficult first one. I don't know, Reda, have you been looking at the list? Has anyone else raised their hand? I'm just going back to have a look now. Oh, we do have one. But I'm not sure there's any audio connected.
So he's not connected to the audio. So Tanveer, let's unmute Dr. Tanveer. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Reda and Mr. Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So would you like me to go ahead with the same what I've written, or give you some brief, little bit what you have told me, what happened, and exactly what is happening in this such situation?
So what we're interested in really is just for you to summarise what you'll be doing as your case study about violence or the threat of violence as a pre-hospital provider, really, rather than focusing on any wider ambulance issues. So if you have anything related to that, you can summarise, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to share something. The studies, basically, the problems of risk, the community perception over the ambulance response, where the community is still expecting that ambulance should be responded within the time limit. And it's not necessary for all the response has to be within a time limit, because there is some classification, all that one. Still the community unaware of when to call the ambulance. So basically when we are reaching and we are facing that one, they are asking why you are late, the ambulance, and it's not necessary to have the physical abuse. Sometimes it's like verbal abuse. So that's kind of scenarios we usually face. So my concern is here to how we can work and how we can make aware the community when to call the ambulance, or how to recognize. It could be making an algorithm for them, easy way to understand the situation that this is emergency or this is not emergency. So when they are calling the ambulance or when they are expecting ambulance, what they have to do it before that. That is the main concern. And usually this is not the only scenario we are facing. I think in this, especially the Middle East or GCC country, the same scenario is happening here. Everyone is looking for the response. They are not looking for the quality of care. They are not looking for the what risk the ambulance service is taking to reach on time. It could be the risk for having the accidents and all those things. So I will just focus on one of the incidents when I was attended during my field, where I personally faced such issues, and it really impact on our personal effect, like we will facing some kind of post-incident stress. So after that one, we come up with some committees also, which can be like a post-incident study briefing. We modified some protocols also to support our staff in terms of when not to transfer the policy, patient policy, something like that. So these are the learning experience we got after such a frequent event, when the community is expecting a lot, and they are expecting basically a fast response, a quick response, though it's not required for each and every case. So in short, we are working on awareness, and same times giving the protections to our EMS professional by guidelines, protocols, as well as giving some kinds of post-incident stress debriefing. So that's I'm going to be making my case study. Thanks.
That's great, Dr. Tanveer. Thank you very much for sharing that. And just before we throw it open to comments or questions, I think you've highlighted a couple of very interesting issues there about mitigating risks and stakeholder engagement, and trying to manage people's expectations as a means of reducing the threat of verbal or physical abuse. And I know you mentioned that physical abuse, fortunately, is not overly common, but you did mention verbal aggression towards teams, and I think, of course, that's a violent action, and it's a threat, and it's something we want to try and reduce. So you'll notice in the case study guidance that it talks about what were the consequences of this incident, and you've already highlighted some of those very nicely, and we'll be asking everybody to do that as part of the detailed assignment, which will be to look at, what changed as a result of this, if anything. Did you change policy? Did you introduce, or your organisation introduce something as a result? How have you mitigated this risk? So that's really helpful to highlight that at this stage, so thank you for sharing. And any questions or comments from anybody else?
Whoops, Michael, are you there?
Oh, hello. Yes, I am. Sorry, it seemed to go very quiet for a moment, but I am here. Any comments from anybody? I see that Carl says excellent point, Doctor. So yeah, that's good. And Erin agrees that meeting expectations is an important important risk reduction strategy, and he's mentions you're talking about advocacy, which is really which is good, and something we'll be asking everyone to do. So some very supportive comments from there. So thank you, Dr. Tanvir, for sharing that. We look forward to seeing that as well. And who's up next, Rida?
So I'm looking at Hassan Korfan's incidents, day one update, but he doesn't seem to be able to unmute himself. So let's go to Lynn. And just give me a second to find Lynn's update. Okay, and of course Lynn was the very first one to post, so congratulations.
Indeed.
And then the question, I think this is, I appreciate how challenging it can be when you're getting started, so being candid and honest, did I do this right? Yes, you did. Lynn, welcome. Please go ahead. I had forgotten about the timer, but Michael did not forget, so you have 3 minutes.
Okay, hi. Hi, everyone. Do everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We had an older man, about 80 years old, with a necrotic toe. So it was a transportation patient and not an emergency case. So we went to the emergency room and to transport this patient to the hospital. There were many people at the emergency room this evening. So we just got the admission papers in our hands from a busy nurse. So we picked him up and took him to the car. He had his daughter with him too, but she wanted to drive her own car to the hospital, so she could get home well too. And everything went well until we've been driving about 15 minutes. The patient suddenly accused me for kidnapping and so on and so on. He started to hit me, and I couldn't communicate with the others because of bad signals. So I didn't get any help before about 15 minutes more. And that's all. And this was a patient who got a delirium, which I found out. So, but I didn't get any message of it. So that's the case. I will see.
That's great. That's great, Lynn. Thank you. And we're just scrolling through some of the comments now to see. So this is a really nice example of where you've done exactly what we've asked you to do. You summarised the case nicely, given us some background so we can understand and relate to it. And I think we can all imagine being in that situation. So it's a good example of how you're going to be doing your case study, everybody, later on. You need to imagine that you're describing it to the community just in more detail, and we need this background and the context, and the guidance document will tell you how to do that. So there's useful information there. And and you can see Lynn has interacted with everybody here. So people have posted comments, and then she's gone back and answered the questions. And this will help you in developing your case study also. If you post your initial outline and people ask you questions, you can then include these elements of information in your update. And so that's great. Thank you very much for doing that. And it's a good example for others.